It's your girl Steph here, wearing my other girl Mickey McGuyton's merch, Black Like Me, because probably my favorite hoodie besides my own. And yeah, we are going to have an awesome conversation about freezing eggs, which I think as minority Black women, or minority women in general, we have not been in charge of our bodies culturally and historically for so long that I think that it's really important that now, as we are gaining that sense of ownership of our bodies, that we are open and talk about the risks and the rewards and the fears and all the things that go along with making our choices about our fertility and about when we have kids and how many kids we have and financially how we are afford to have kids. So I'm really excited to have my girl join me for this, and she is going to, hey Rachel, so it's going to be a really just open conversation about her journey, and I hope you guys enjoy hearing her story because she's phenomenal, and she's been really open about it, and I think that a lot of people can benefit from just hearing somebody that's gone through it. You know, we don't all have friends that have gone through things. So let me add Revae to this. And then we can just get going and chatting and talking on this Tuesday. Hey.
Hey. I feel like I need to, give me 1 second. I feel like I need to get my AirPods for this so I can really hear you.
I feel you.
Just a second.
Yes. See, AirPods help everything out. I'm just going to be drinking my diet now.
All right, this is much better
for you. Oh, yes. If my AirPods weren't dead, they would be in as well. I have the case here, and I'm like, oh, didn't charge those suckers, but I have a mic hooked up to all of this, so it makes sense.
Yes. See,
how are you?
You are the professional. I just
that's what I say.
Trying to get it together. So
how are you doing?
I'm okay. Just working and hanging in there. And
are you back in the office yet, or
no? So still from home. They have, however, started to give us a sense of when we will likely go back. They're thinking sometime around September. Okay. So I know. So I'm a little bummed about it, but I am. One, I'm glad that they are giving us, kind of this heads up and this runway. Mm-hmm. And I am sad. I hate saying this out loud, but part of me thinks that going into the office will be good because I think it'll just help create the balance that once existed when I wasn't doing everything in this 600 and some odd square foot Los Angeles apartment. So
yeah, it creates a boundary. It creates the boundaries of your life, which I know.
Yeah,
as somebody who has been freelance her life, I'm sometimes I want a place to just go and when I'm working on music with a specific artist, they'll be like, we can be here for this week, and that whole week I'm like, oh, the structure. I go home and I'm off. I'm not just looking at the keyboard all day long.
Yeah, that separation, that physical separation.
Structure. And nice. It will help mentally, mental health. I think a lot of people to know that it's not all in the home.
Yeah, I think so too.
Your freedom kind of gets taken too. So there's a mourning period. I'm glad you have a little bit of time.
Yeah, definitely. It's
I know my sister works at a university, and she's like, I hope that they do hybrid where I don't need to be there every day. Yeah. But I can be there a few days.
I think that would be the most ideal. So they haven't figured it out at my job yet, but if we can do some sort of hybrid, that would be the most ideal. Because I feel like anything else is jarring.
Yeah, it's just, it's too much. I'm super excited about seeing people, but I'm also have so much anxiety about seeing people, too many people. I'm like, okay, y'all are really close.
Right.
Because I have festivals and stuff in the fall that
good.
My friends are performing at and I'm performing at, and I'm like, that's a lot of people. So I'm a little okay, we'll get through it. I'll get through it.
I know.
And then I'll be happy again because I do love people. But
yeah, I do. I do miss some of the social aspects.
Yeah, and I get to come see you, so I'll be
you'll be in LA.
Positive.
Come on out.
Well, I'm so happy that you took the time to join me today because I I've been thinking a lot about the subject of like fertility and egg freezing over this pandemic, and I've had a few friends start the process,
Oh, good.
and I'm planning on starting the process this summer. And kind of, I just realized there's just not a lot of open, constructive conversation publicly about it. Like, it's starting to happen a little bit more,
Yeah,
but there's
definitely
not a lot of minority women that are speaking about it. And as we are seeing more Black women in like executive roles and in corporate America, it's a real conversation about like when we want to be parents, if we want to be parents, like what that looks like, how we make those decisions, because we have options, which I feel like previous generations of Black women didn't have options like we have. And I was really impressed with how open you were when you spoke on it, when you had your article with Tony. I was really impressed. And then I was texting you and I was like, I would love to just have you share a bit of your story and like why you chose to do it, and how that all manifested for you. Like did it just, had you always thought like, this is something I want to do, or was there something that happened that was like, oh, I should, start thinking about this? Because I'm a couple years older than you, but like, we're not old. Like,
no.
You know,
Repeat that one more time. We're not old.
We're not old. I mean, I guess in like fertility, they say we're old, but like we're not.
Even
like
still.
we're not.
Yeah.
That was created a long time ago.
It
which
definitely was. And I recently read another article about that like 35 fertility cliff and how that is just a myth. But
it's a myth.
or not something to be as concerned about, I guess, you know, because people definitely make it seem like you should just pack it up and pack it in.
Yeah, like it's done. No more choices.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so let's see. I think, okay, so the seed was planted by Natasha Bowler, honestly. I don't even think she's on this live just yet, but
love her.
If she will join. Yes. But her father, I remember Bowler, we were probably in our 20s at this point. I don't remember how early in our 20s, but I remember she had mentioned to me that her dad, who's a doctor, sorry, Bowler, her dad, who's a doctor, mentioned it to her as an option and something that she should think about, like after a certain point. And so after she told me that, I had like my same childhood doctor that I'd gone to since I was like, my childhood doctor, she was like a second mother to me because, and so I remember I had gone in for like one of my like annual pap smear, just women's, you know, checkups. And I had asked her at the time, like, hey, so my friend's dad mentioned, you know, freezing her eggs if by a certain point, is that something that you would recommend for me? And so, and my doctor, a Black woman, like I said, she was like second mama.
Yes.
And so at this point, I'm probably early 20s. And I asked her and she's like, well, Revae, you know, the only place that you need to worry about keeping your eggs right now is like in your ovaries. Like you're fine for now. Like that's not even something that you need to worry about. So just, you know, relax, you'll be all right. And I'm like, okay, you know.
Yeah.
So that seed, like I said, was kind of planted back then. And I kind of, you know, I've watered it a little bit each year as I've continued to age. And so finally, I last year, 2019 actually. So in the article that I shared on blacklove.com,
I think it's Yes. I'll link it. I'll link the article, folks.
In the article that I shared, I mentioned that I'm like this huge birthday person, and I was like, oh my God, my birthday's coming up. This is before I knew it was going to be a pandemic, and none of that meant anything. And I'm like, oh, my birthday's coming up. I'm going to be 35. You know, I am a celebratory person, and so this was a milestone birthday to me, even though it wasn't like 30 or 40, but it still was like this milestone. And I was just, you know, thinking through how I was going to celebrate it toward the end of the year, so at least like 6 or 8 months before my actual birthday. And I was just thinking like, oh, 35, what do I want to do? How do I want to celebrate? And I was like, oh my God, 35, you know, then like 5 alarm bells just started going off in my head. And I'm like, fertility cliff, 35, you know, like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? And so then it just kind of, you know, came back up to the forefront. And I also am Yeah, so that really is how it came back about because, like I said, the seed was planted many years ago. I
Hmm.
remember, her father saying maybe like early 30s or somewhere around that. I don't remember the specific
Hmm.
age, but I kind of, it had like the bulb had gone off then, but then I just kind of kept it like dim in the background. And so finally, when I was turning 35 and I was thinking about all of these, really scary articles that they read about women and fertility, I just thought to myself, like, hey, I'm going to be 35 next year. Let me, at least do whatever I can or look into doing whatever I can to try and make sure that I'm good because I know I want to have kids
Yeah,
and I know that, I'm not currently in a position where I'm ready to do that. So let me just, look into what my options are. And so that really sparked the whole thing.
that's that's awesome. That's kind of the same way that I came to it. I was like, my sister had a kid, and I have friends that have had kids in their 40s,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, it was more so the pandemic happened because I was like, nothing's gonna happen, and then the pandemic happened, and like dating froze up, and I was
Right.
like, wait, am I gonna lose like a year of like my wait? I was like,
Really? It's a thing.
I don't count this year, but my body counts this year. So
Amazing.
what am I gonna do? Because I want to have a kid, but that this year wasn't the year for it. So it kind of made me start Googling a lot of
Yeah.
information, being like, what can I do? What resources do I have? And I was looking during the pandemic, and I was like, and of course, nothing's happening. But now things are opening again. But
My dog
it was the
Jazz would
worst
like to
time to
join this
like have a
conversation.
freak out. It was when everything was closed. I'm like, but I can't do anything.
I know. But I mean, it was good because it at least gave you an opportunity to do your research, to,
Mm-hmm.
just kind of see what was out there, get comfortable with the idea, because that is a
Yeah.
thing too. It's I mean, maybe not necessarily big decision. I know for me, it wasn't like a big decision, but it is a big decision. Like it's
Yeah.
a financial decision. It's a physical decision. Like, am I going to put myself and my body through this? It's an emotional decision, as my dog yawns.
Oh yeah.
It is. It's
Yeah. He's like,
definitely,
I don't know. He's like, I don't know.
yeah. So you
And
had the time, or you were able to give yourself the time to actually sit and think through it and plan it out for yourself.
yeah, and in that, when you were making the decision, because
Hmm.
if you're freezing your eggs, it basically leads to like when you're ready to have a kid, IVF. Like so, there's like the cost of like freezing your eggs, but then there's when you want to have a baby. Like,
Yeah.
are you like what went through your mind? Like, were you thinking about cost and the future, and then eventually you might be having that conversation with like your husband or something like everything might not go the same way as you
Yeah.
were thinking about it because now like you're plotting like yes you
Right.
could still have a kid naturally but now there's all these other options. Was any of that going through your brain? Because I'm telling you it was going through mine. I was like okay, so
Absolutely.
I have a lot now
Yeah. So
thinking
I
about.
I actually yes, in short, I at the time my job luckily
Mhm.
covered, not covered, but they provided coverage.
Okay.
There's a
Yes.
difference there in the
Yes.
semantics. But my job provided coverage for the process, and that was one of the first things that I did when I decided that I wanted to go forward with
Hmm.
the process. I called my jobs, their health insurance line, and just asked what coverage was available to me.
Hmm.
And I found out through that process, fortunately, I have, a job that does provide coverage. It's called fertility preservation at this point because all I was doing is freezing and not
Okay.
going through the full cycle of in vitro. So they
Yeah.
do provide fertility preservation benefits, and they provided 2 rounds of egg retrieval, which is what I went through. And
Okay.
then, in the future, if I were to stay at the company, and prayerfully the benefits don't change, they would also provide 2 rounds of in vitro.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, and so, and it was just through my provider.
Hmm.
My normal co-insurance applied. I at that time because I, am a planner and I am a forward thinker. So
Yeah.
I said, okay, it's the end of 2019 where I'm making this decision. It was right before benefit elections, were
Hmm.
up. So I said, I know I'm going to do this next year, early 2020. So let me up, my coverage. So I had the lowest amount of co-insurance, the lowest, out of pocket minimum. I just upped it because I knew it was going to be an expensive
Hmm.
process.
Yes.
So I upped it then. And then I also, because at that time you also have the opportunity to put money on your like flex spending or to designate money to that. So
Yeah.
it can be pre-tax. So I said, all right, let's, put the max on this joint. So again, just so I can mitigate whatever costs or, get as much pre-tax as I could possibly get. So I did that. And I also, when I made the decision, was dating someone at the time.
Okay.
And, again, we're not in a place where like this is a right hand ring, not the left.
Yeah.
The left is very empty.
Yeah.
So, we're definitely not at a place at this point where we're talking about, marriage or engagements or next steps or that sort of thing. We're just kind of enjoying each other
Yeah.
and just enjoying the ride. And so, but at the same time, just knowing, like you said, this is something that I'm going to do, and I'm not going to ask for your permission for it. But because you are someone that I am seriously considering as a partner, I at least want to like kind of gauge to see how you feel
Yeah.
about this. Not that it's going to make me not do it, but I just want to see how you feel about it. Let you know
Yeah.
that, what's going on and what I'm going to do and get your thoughts. Because you might be having a test tube baby with me in a couple of years.
True.
So,
Like, and you're like,
so
this
how do you
might tell
feel
me
about that?
whether you're going to be a long term or
That's
not.
it,
Like,
So
are we on the same page?
exactly.
Like, not,
Are we, can you do this petri dish baby or not? Because
I'm so pro test tube babies. I just really am. I just want to have twins and
so,
done. So I'm like, let's do
yes,
this.
that would be amazing. I would love to be on my Beyonce second pregnancy. Like, let's
You don't
do
upset. That's all I want.
That's
I'm
it.
good.
So it was a conversation that I had with him just to say like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Want to let you know, like you said, kind of gauge where you are so I can see like long-term prospect. Is that you? Because the train isn't stopping regardless
Mm-hmm.
of how you feel about it. But because you are someone that, sorry, the dog. So we had that conversation. He was, totally fine and didn't seem to have any issues. And so so that was basically that. And then even beyond that, when I had actually gone to the doctor at this point and started the process with her, she had mentioned to me like, hey, so do you want, because the only way, and I don't know if we're going to get here at some point in the conversation, but
Yeah.
according to my doctor, the only way for them to figure out the viability of the egg itself is when it's fertilized. So they can't
Yep.
just retrieve them. They can do like a little eye spot check, but they can't really tell like chromosomally what the deal is. And so she asked like, hey, if you want, you can freeze half, you can, and then fertilize the other half. Have you thought about sperm donors? And I was like, ooh, girl.
Whole nother layer.
Like it was a whole nother layer. So that was also something that I had to think about during the process too, that
Mm-hmm.
I truly had not been thinking about beforehand. It just led to a series of other thoughts, which I don't know if we're going to get, but I'll let you
It just
lead.
gets so, like, as you're thinking about it, it gets so real. And a lot of the questions that, like, I've always been told, like, you need to be thinking about this when you're dating somebody, and you're like, in the back of your mind, I was like, oh, this is like, I really, what do I want? Like, do I have faith I'm going to find somebody? Do I have faith do I want to have like a backup plan and know what the quality is? Because quantity, like my friend just went through her first round of IVF, and she's insanely brave because her husband passed away of cancer,
wow.
but she had gotten his sperm, and so she's having a baby by herself. But like, she got like 20 eggs, but only one was viable. Like,
wow.
After like insemination, so she's doing another round, and then that one had a genetic thing, so
wow,
like a genetic trait in it, and you're like, oh, so you went through all of that, and you still have to do it again. Like, realizing the toll it can take, and it's not a guarantee. It's kind of like giving you a little bit of a backup plan. I mean, not everything's a guarantee in life. Nothing's guaranteed, but it's kind of like watching her go through that. I was like, okay, so it made me feel okay it's making me feel okay not necessarily having like a donor or fertilized, because I'm like, even with that, it still might not, and there's quality there. Like, there's so many factors that play a role. But one of the positives is, and I've been doing some research and stuff about it, is that for Black women, like our frozen eggs, we have a higher rate of live births after freezing our eggs than if you're Caucasian.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's,
so I'm like, I was like, thank you. I was like, does half count? Like, we get that biracial like rate in there? But I don't know why, but like Walter Reed did a study about it, and it just showed it was a reasoning for Black women to go ahead
go for
and
it. Yeah.
look into it. because it's not, I don't want to say sold as much to us, but not as many doctors bring it up to us as they do to Caucasian women. And it could be because there's not as many Black doctors, just the rate of everything is lower for us.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting little fact that we do have
Yeah.
a higher live birth rate after going through IVF.
That is, that's good to know.
So,
I mean, like you said, none of it is guaranteed, you know, and I just feel like whatever it is that I can do, and even taking out the fact that I, you know, am single or, you know, not married or whatever have you, even that aside, it really for me wasn't necessarily about like, oh, I'm this single woman at 35 who hasn't found, it really wasn't even necessarily about that. I think even if I were engaged or even if I were married and we just weren't at a place where we were ready to have a baby, like right now, I just think I am at a place where, like I said, just the insurance policy, because it's not necessarily, as you mentioned, it's not just about age or the number of eggs or whatever have you. It's about the viability, and there's no way for you to find that out with those things inside your body. So like, it's you know, and they're not gonna get any, like the quality's not gonna get any better. Like my quality tomorrow is gonna be worse than it was today or last week, or you know, like, so it's not gonna, you know, so I just felt like whatever it is that I can do, even like outside of just my marital status, whatever I can do to make sure that I have like the highest probability, if you will, or whatever I can control, basically, I'm going to try and control, which is how I, you know, like I said, ultimately came to the decision. And I would suggest women who are, you know, maybe late 30s, mid 30s, whatever, you know, who are engaged or are married to, you know, look into it for themselves too, because say now you have a baby at 37, but what if you want to have another kid at like 40 or 42 or something? And it might get harder. And not that it's impossible, because it isn't. You know, we all know women, like you said, we all know women who, you know, mid, late, even, you know, like I said, late 40s who've conceived and been fine and done it naturally. But there's no guarantee.
There is no guarantee. And
yeah.
Kind of how we both have been reading articles about like 35, the cliff isn't technically factual the way they explain it.
Yeah.
But there is the factual factor is we are getting older and our cells are getting older. So no matter what, we're aging. So everything in our bodies is aging, which has an effect. And we all age at different things. We all have environmental factors that have affected based on where we were raised, what we were around. So my thought was like, I feel, and my doctor has said I'm fertile and all those things, but I'm going to just get older. So why not figure out if I can do this now? Because maybe I can do it naturally later. And that's awesome. But maybe I can't. And then maybe later I find out, oh, they weren't good. But if they weren't good then, they're not going to be really not good when I'm 40 or 41, you know? And luckily for me, like I am freelance, so I pay for my own insurance and I go through things, but I was able to kind of like you did before the end of the year, before choosing my new insurance and figuring out what I wanted to do. I was like, let me see if there's like a policy that includes this. Because even if it costs a little more, it really saves me in the long run. Because I'm like, I'm freelance, so it's going to be all out of pocket anyway. So if I can save a few bucks, that helps. And I also found a lot of resources for like minority fertility grants and things that I was like, this is awesome. Like there's just, you have to go deep in that Google search, but I'm going to link them to this because I think that people need to know, like there are resources if your insurance doesn't cover it.
I think that would
there are resources for everything. There are funds for everything. There are grants. You just have to have the wherewithal to know, oh, I'm going to apply for this. There are, if you're married, if you're single, like if you're infertile, if you're just trying to like go back to school and you don't want to have a kid yet, like there are grants for everything for fertility. Not saying there's endless amounts, but there are more happening, especially for Black women.
Oh, nice. Yeah, definitely share. Because that's something that I wasn't too sure about, because I didn't have to go down that route. But I know I have had a number of people reach out to me, you know, because like you said, I was pretty open with my
Yeah.
experience and with sharing my experience. And women have definitely reached out asking about, whether or not I knew of options where
Mhm.
your insurance didn't cover it. And I just don't. And I haven't, but
Yeah.
if there is something that I can share, like if someone reaches out, that would be awesome if you
Yeah.
could
I made
pass
a,
that
like a
along.
little link tree with all of the links in it because it was just
Nice.
I was like, this is information. And yes, it's not like, ooh, you got like free money. Like you have to fill out applications and things.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, if you're doing the process of freezing your eggs, you're already thinking ahead and
Yeah.
you're already in that mindset.
And
Like
it's already something that is of value to you.
a
So,
value. So I'm like,
so it should be something that, people may want to spend a little extra time on, especially if it saves them tens of thousands of
yeah,
dollars.
yeah, because it's some real
Yeah.
money. It is some
Yeah.
real money. Now, what I was going to ask, and we've talked about it, and I wanted to know like your advice about like finding a place because my friend who's going through it is flying to Denver for IVF,
Oh,
which is
wow.
awesome, but not everybody can like fly. She lives in Tennessee, can fly to Denver for all your appointments, like because things keep switching and changing, and yeah, she's awesome, and there's a reason because of her husband. Like she feels it has
Yeah.
to happen in Denver, and I respect it completely. But like I said, not that is another financial component. I'm even looking like I didn't want it to be like an hour away because I knew
Mm-hmm.
how you had said like appointments change and like when you get closer to retrieval, the times change. Like so, what advice would you give to people who are definitely going through it but now need to like find a doctor and what helped you?
Yeah. So I feel like my experience may be atypical because like I said, my job, it was covered through my job and they had certain centers that they worked with. So,
Okay.
they let me know when I asked for, what the coverage was, they let me know, these are they call them centers of excellence. I don't know
Okay.
why, but, um, I mean,
I mean, we like
mm,
excellence here.
yeah,
So,
I'm with it.
yeah.
So yeah, so they were like, we have two centers of excellence that we use. And I just chose the one that was closest to me because, I knew that in the LA area. So they were just
Yeah.
going based on my location. And so, I went according to what was the closest to me
Mm-hmm.
because again, like I kind of knew or was aware of the fact that like just when I talked to one of the fertility nurses like through my insurance plan and she was just kind of like walk me through the process and let me know how it was going to go. And so I knew how, or I had an idea, if you will, that I would have to frequently attend these appointments during that time. So that's how I chose. And through that, there still was a list of doctors that practiced at that facility. And so I got to choose my doctor
Well,
and I went with, and I mean, I feel like as with any care provider, it really is like just your personal preference. So like I looked at the doctors, I looked at their rates and their success rates and whatever information that I could find on them. But it ultimately just because I think there were two or three doctors in the practice. I can't remember exactly. But they both, like they all seemed great on paper and in terms of the results that they had. So it really, like I said, just kind of came down to personal preference. And the thing that swayed me ultimately was that the woman that I choose, her name was Dr. Carrie Wambach,
oh,
that she had her son. I can't remember how old he is now, but she had her son. He's like school age, maybe elementary school age, if that,
mm-hmm.
through in vitro. So I felt good about that because I thought, okay, and not that a man can empathize because I've had male doctors, even like male gynecologists, and they're all great, they're fine. But I just felt like with something so
Yeah. She's been
emotional,
through it. She
I
knows.
thought, yeah, I felt good about going to someone who's gone through it. So that's how
Yeah.
I ultimately ended up with her. But I mean, again, it really was who is my insurance company going to pay for? And then let me make my decision based on that. And I also happen to be in an area like Los Angeles that, there's no shortage of good doctors or like good
True.
healthcare or access to good healthcare. So it really wasn't a concern of mine. Now,
Mm-hmm.
being somewhere like Tennessee, where I'm not familiar, or being even Denver.
They don't
I
have it.
don't,
Yeah, it's not as
yeah,
many. I mean,
yeah,
Nashville's getting better, but it's not. It's not LA. It's
yeah,
not LA or the Bay, like the San Francisco Bay Area, or like even DC. It's not.
yeah,
It's not the hub of that yet. It hasn't grown,
yeah,
and Tennessee has their own stuff with like reproduction anyway. So different story. Different story. I would guess, I just want, before I slowly close, I wanted to say, I appreciate that you were so open about it. Not because you had to be, but I think the more representation we have and the more we normalize like the conversations,
mm-hmm.
and that this is normal, like this is normal in our day and age to realize that we have control, as much control as we can of our choices. Like if we want to have a kid, we can figure out ways to do it. Yes, there are going to be some financial limitations, but we can do the research and just start digging in, and seeing people going through it helps you realize it. Because I saw some people mention like they don't know, like you were one of the only people they knew that's Black that has gone through it. And I would say like you're one of two people that I know that are Black. I know a lot of like white women that have gone through it, but I don't know a lot of Black women, or if they have, I don't know. They haven't done it publicly, so I don't really know. They might have, you know?
So through my experience, that was one of the reasons why I decided to share so openly, because the first thing I did when I decided, I was like, okay, let me poll my friends to see who, if anyone, has gone through this, and what, if anything, anyone can tell me. Now that I'm considering it, I just need to do as much due diligence as possible. And it's a large group of friends, and not nary a one of them had gone through it before. And so I was like, okay. And, you know, we're all at that point, early to mid 30s, and successful, you know, some have had kids, some have not had kids, some are married, just all in different stages of our like relationship or lives or whatever have you. And so I'm like, the fact that none of us have done this, like, that's kind of wild to me, you know?
Not a one.
And then, so it really went. And so that's why I was like, you know what, let me just share this, because I think in terms of like my experience and like the real of it too, because I'm sure that there's some other Black woman out here who is polling her girlfriends, trying to figure out whether or not, you know, it's something that they've gone through, or trying to figure out like, what does this even mean? Or what does this look like? Or, you know, and it wasn't until I started sharing, that's when not a lot, but maybe at least 5 other like women, Black women, reached out to me and said like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing you're sharing this. I actually went through this. I did. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, like, why aren't you guys sharing about this? Like, more people need to be open about this. And I think one of the issues, which is another reason, yet another layer why I decided to share, is I think a lot of times, you know, Black women anyway, I can't tell you what white women think because I'm not one, but Black women anyway, I think we look at even coming to this crossroads or making this decision as like a failure, or, you know, or just worry about like the stigma attached to it. And I, you know, I know for myself anyway, like I definitely had, when I was an early 20 something, I definitely had, or even in my early college years, I had an idea for this life that I thought I would lead, and I'm not leading it in any way, shape, or form.
Don't you worry, neither
but
am I.
It's so great that I'm not. I could not be happier
life.
That I'm not living the life that I thought I was going to live 15 years ago, because I could not even have dreamt exactly this life that I'm actually living. And so I think that that's the thing. Like, it's not necessarily about like failure. Like, no, actually, honey, you've done, you know, like I thought I would have maybe be married at like 24, thought I would have a kid by like 25 or 7. Do you know what I was doing at 27? Traveling. I was in law school, you know. Do you know what I was doing at 30? I was in Thailand. Like, I was working a job. I had passed the bar. I had just done all these things that I just, my childish mind, I guess, if you would, just could not even have imagined. You know, do you know what I did at 32? I packed up on a, you know, whim. I applied to a job and moved to LA. I would not have been able to do that with a husband, with a baby, with anything other than, you know, me needing to take care of, or me needing to consider myself. So I, again, am living my wildest dreams currently. And I just think more women, and especially older Black women, need to normalize that. I was telling friends a little while ago, sometimes I do think that like older generations, not that I don't think envy is the right word. I'm trying to think of the word. I do think that there is like not an envy, but there is I can't think of the word. The same way that we're able to look at women who are early 20s now and
Yeah.
think like, man, she's so free. And I
So
love
free.
it. Like, I love it. Own it, girl. You know, like
Yeah.
the same way that we're able to, I think our parents' generation and our
Yeah.
grandparents' generation look back at us like that too. But because it's something that you cannot imagine for yourself, or you could not have imagined for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're a little salty about it and what you see. And I think that
I
is
agree.
some of the stigma that like these, maybe older generations have imparted on our generation. But now, because our generation is much more open and free about it, then I hope that these 20 somethings that are now living their truth and just owning their selves, their
Yeah.
whole selves. I hope that, when they get here, they don't even have to think twice about that and the stigma or what it means for them or failure, because it's none of that.
It's not a
It's not about
failure.
any of that.
It's an opportunity. I look at it like an
Yeah.
opportunity. Like, this is an opportunity that my grandparents didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't have the opportunity to freeze their eggs. Like, these was the things that they even thought about. So they didn't have the opportunity to have the jobs, like the bank accounts. Like, we think
Yeah.
about what rights women had 50 years ago. Like, you don't have, or 30 years ago, 20 years ago, folks. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, I like you, when I was in college, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get married, I'm gonna have kids, like, life. And I still want those things,
Of
but I
course.
would not have been able to go on tour with a kid. Like, people do it, but I was
Yeah.
able to just live my
To just
life and
be.
move to
Yeah.
so many places and be selfish. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
so thankful to be able to be selfish,
Yeah.
because then when I'm ready, I can choose to not be selfish and care for
Exactly.
another being. Like,
And you would
I have
you
I'm
yeah.
aware of that I'm making that choice,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have to make that choice. So, like I say, I love my life. I mean, I love your life too.
Thank you.
It's a good one. As we close, I just want to ask you one more question. Is there anything you wish you would have known when you were starting, like when you had decided to do it, like having gone through the process, having done anything? Is there anything you wish you would have known beforehand?
Mm, I
I know I put you on the spot.
Yeah, I
Maybe there's
really
not.
don't think so. I really don't think so. I mean, I do wish that I would have had someone that I could have talked to.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been amazing, to just have someone who I could have gotten that firsthand just info from. So one of my friends who, like I said, after I'd already decided to go through the process with the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and I hadn't quite started the injections or any of those
Yeah.
things yet, and I was terrified because I was the woman. My mother actually just joined. Hey, mom. Hey, girl. But I was, for even into my adult life, like I was the woman. Like, if my mother came with me to the doctor's office, I was sitting on her lap to get a needle,
Yes.
and with my big grown self. I did not like needles. So I was just extremely worried about the needles and how that was going to go, and what, hey, she said
Hi.
or how all of that was going to happen. And so a friend of mine recommended watching, it was a Netflix show with Keegan Michael Key called Friends
Okay.
from College. And in the show, at some point, it was only one season, so it would be easy to find the episode. He and his wife decided
I've
they were
watched
gonna.
it. I
Oh,
like
you
it.
watched it? Okay, it was such a cute show. No,
It's my
Netflix
type of show.
cancels all the good
That's my
stuff.
type of
Mine
show.
too. Yeah. So they had the wife at his Keegan's wife in the show had they had started to go through the in vitro process, and so she's like, just watch this one episode, and that'll just give you a sense of like what your life is. And so they're like running through the city, and she's at a party, and she needs to inject herself, and they drop it was just like this chaotic
Mm-hmm.
scene. And so I watched it, and it did make me feel a little better about it, just to see like, okay, this person. Or even watching Being Mary Jane, and like what there was that one season, maybe it was season 1 or season 2?
Two. I think it was two.
Okay.
We have the same viewing history.
Yes, where the Mary Jane, so Gabrielle Union's character, went through the process as a part of the show and as a part of her like news show. So just I kind of watched those shows and went back to them like, okay, what's this going to be like to get a sense? But I think that was the only thing. Like, there really wasn't anything else, because I did do a lot of research. So I was pretty familiar, or not familiar. it wasn't a mystery to me what the process was or how it was going to go. It just
Mm-hmm.
really was just the fear, or I guess the nerves associated with just okay, well, I mean, I know on paper how it's going to go, but like, how is it actually going to go? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I mean, I'm thankful that I have you, so I can just text you, be like, what is up? What is going on? Because I mean, I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful like that you've been public and that I can, like, there are some few people that I can talk to about it, but I'm also thankful that you held space and talked here, because I think this we just need to normalize. We just need to normalize talking about things that maybe our parents didn't talk about. Like,
Yeah.
maybe we didn't grow up having such an open conversation, but why not? Like, why not just share our experiences and help our sisters, feel comfortable asking us or asking somebody else. And this might help somebody start doing the research.
Yeah, I think so. And I do think, I'm back to the point about Black women. I think one of the reasons too is just access, like being in jobs where that is, something that's covered, or having the means to pay for something like egg freezing if your company does not cover it. I think that also is something. So, again, sharing, as you mentioned, sharing that information that you were able to find about alternative means of coverage, because I think stuff like that is very important. And that may be why, it's more, there may be more like white women or non-Black women who are undergoing this process, not just because they don't necessarily, not just because, their doctors are pushing it to them, but maybe, because they also typically have more means than Black women. So
historically,
so I think that's something that can
and I do
too.
believe I'm like sharing. I'm always looking for a grant. Like, I'm like, is there a grant for this? Because if there is, I will apply for it, because I'm always like, I'm not going to pay this full price.
Right. Okay.
And I'm always like, if it's meant for me, I'm always like, it's meant for me. If it's meant for somebody else, it's meant for somebody else. So I'm never against sharing with whoever wants to have the information. So I will definitely add those links, and I will send you some stuff. So when people ask you, you can pass along all the information so that we can just have people have the ability to make the choice, like not have it be because of means or anything, just like have the options.
Exactly.
To have control of your body and your timeline.
Agreed. I think
we all should. And
I agree.
Yeah, thank you so much for spending your Tuesday night with me. I always I just love seeing your face, and can't wait to see you in person now that we are vaccinated and can hug.
Yes. Looking forward to that. And thank you so much for, having this very important conversation, and for having me on to share my experience.
Yay. And I will post it on my page, and I will send it to you so you can post it on yours. And so if anybody came in late, you can just rewind that sucker and watch from the beginning.
Sounds good.
All righty. Have a good night. And thanks everybody for watching. All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.